Solo House by Sofia von Ellrichshausen is a building turned inside out. It was commissioned by Christian Bourdet, who had bought 50 hectares of land in northeastern Spain. What we want to do is reinvent the way of living in a secondary or a holiday house, he said. This is a house to be occupied in an informal manner, says von Ellrichshausen. It is for holidays, for those days that break your routine, that allow you to dress differently, to eat differently, to enjoy small details, to be detached from what you consider to be a responsibility. To that end, the furnishings are spare but carefully considered, and the planning is all about living on the verandas and the experience of nature, of light, breezes, and the stars at night. Here, Sofia von Ellrichshausen tells us about the conceptual thinking behind the remarkable solo house. I wanted to ask about the relationship with Christian Bourdet, because he obviously saw something great in your work. What do you think it was that attracted his attention?
When we met, it was several years ago. We had a few work spills, but I think that he saw some of the houses we have here in Chile, which is Casa Poli and Casa Rio in the south. And I think he really liked the way they're inserted in nature, that they're very present, but at the same time they have a peacefulness about them that they seem to have been there for a long time. But actually, you should ask him this question.
Yes, it's very true. But he also said that he wasn't so interested in just the object, that he was very interested in the thinking behind the decisions. Did you enjoy that approach?
Yes, of course. When we met with him early on, I think also an aspect he was interested is that they're houses that are not at all pretentious. Mm-hmm. So they have a very simple way of dealing with their surrounding context, and they're quite autonomous, and at the same time there's something that is very much about the context within the house. So yes, I think that was one of the reasons he selected us.
And he gave the brief and the land and the budget, and then he gave you freedom. That's quite unusual, isn't it? And so was that exciting for you?
Yes, of course it was. I think he's an ideal client. He's also a wonderful person. So we're very careful about the work we do, and for us it's extremely important to like the person we are working with. So we first met, we happened to bump into each other, I think in some airport, and we were going one place and he was going another. And he started telling us about his intentions. He still didn't have a site, he still didn't have the exact brief, but he knew what he wanted to do. So when then he contacted us again for the real project, and he said, okay, now I have a site, and we went to visit it together. I think we were already all in the same page.
Exactly. Yes. And when you visited the site for the first time, did it deliver a feeling of excitement that was a place that you wanted to create in? Because you have done a lot of work in forested areas and so forth. So did it feel a very appropriate site for your work?
It's a wonderful site. I think anyone would be thrilled to occupy it. Of course, when we do architecture, anything you put will somehow destroy the perfect aspect of that nature. What was I think very interesting is when we arrived to the site, Christian was not at all pushy about where to place the house, and he he said, okay, why don't you walk around and see what you'd like to do? So we ended up in exactly the same place where he thought the house should be, which is the top of this small
Yes.
hill.
Yes.
Uh,
That's very nice, though, that he kind of gave you the freedom to explore and come to your own conclusion, even though he maybe had an idea himself.
yes, and also I think it seems to be an almost obvious place to be. Um, it's it has all of this 360 view around it, which is spectacular. But of course, within the ADN of the house is the reason of being you're in the top of the hill, but you're still in the middle of the trees.
Yes. Yes.
So the house, of course, tries to deal with going above that stratum of foliage.
Yes, yes, that's right. So you've got that beautiful view, and I also found that the use of materials was very serene. So within the forested setting, the way you'd used, concrete had that lovely texture and humanity, and the timber is that a palette of materials that you favour in your work?
We don't have an established material we work with. We do have a very defined preference, which is all materials that are natural. We don't like anything that is imitating something else or that is poor quality. Which doesn't mean that they have to be expensive materials, but we like materials that are in themselves natural, and so of course we try to work with those always, and in this case we were not given a restriction in regards to material. Of course, it was the appropriate material to cantilever that much. We work a lot with concrete here in Chile. We have very strong earthquakes, and therefore it's the material that best resists. So we don't find it to be extravagant or different. It's quite normal to us. And it made sense for the design. But we never start with the material. We always think of what is the appropriate spatial relation or situation we want to generate, and then the material comes as a second ingredient.
That makes sense. And so that notion of the pool sitting in the middle of the space and the living on the verandas, was that a sort of eureka moment when you arrived at that solution?
We never operate with one main idea. We never think of a big gesture. We never try to put a concept into what we're doing. We normally work with a lot of small decisions that seem to make sense. So we knew we wanted to be up on the hill. We knew we needed to be above the trees. We knew this house was going to be left alone a lot of the time, and therefore needed to minimize its exposure to passerbys. We knew we wanted an exterior area where a swimming pool could be. So all of this at some point crystallizes into one idea that has not started with a pool in the center. No?
Yes,
But
yes.
it made sense. The pool became the protected area. It became the center of the house, and became, in a way, the balance of it all.
And I love the way you approach the house, getting to that small hill, going up the steps, and then when you get to the top, you can choose entrance, and that sense of choice is interesting, because also when you go up into the swimming pool area, you can choose. And it's unusual, I think, in a space like that to have options. Was that sense of choice another one of those formative ideas?
Yes, we thought of it. Of course, this is a temporary residence, therefore one can face it differently. In general, I think that comfort is very overrated, and many decisions are taken in the name of comfort. And we believe that if someone is going to occupy this site and is already traveling several hours to get there, we thought there was a necessary distance of, leaving the plane trip behind, leaving the car trip behind, and feeling the place before you're in the house. And that's why we have this actually quite perverse long staircase going up. But it's it's almost a ritual to get to the house and to slow down. Sorry.
Yes, I was just going to say, and because in a way you arrive with your heart beating when you get to the
Yes.
top, there is a bit of a sense of excitement as well, and then you have this choice. And so it does set up a sense of expectation in that way.
Yes. And yes, so you end up you walk in the forest and looking at this house, wanting to get there. When you finally get there, you have this choice. It's a moment. It's of course totally arbitrary, but it also talks about this new way of inhabiting the space, that you don't necessarily have things there for an exact reason, and then the house becomes this. It's a constant choice to move around it, to decide in what terrace you'll be, in which of the glass pavilions you'll be. So yes, we really liked to explicitly build a house that will not propose a linear experience. A linear experience is arriving to it, and once you're there, it becomes a constant path of many choices.
And I like also the difference between the darkness of the arrival, with the pool pulled down, and so you see the swimming pool as you arrive, and then that beautiful sculptural staircase. So there's lots of beauty as well as you move through that. I mean, it's quite a sensual experience moving through the entranceway that's different from other entrance experiences.
Yes, of course, you walk into this blind podium, which can be quite intimidating. It's almost magnifying the experience of walking through the forest, up through the forest, and you reach this cave-like interior, as you say, with a couple of options of going around the pool, but you already have a glimpse of what is happening in the world above. Through the water, you might even see someone who's already occupying the house is swimming in it. And yes, and then finally you arrive to the heart of the house. You arrive to the center point of it. And of course, that's when you discover that I guess you intuitively know you're reaching the top of the trees, but that's where you once again see all the landscape around you and the three-dimensional experience.
And the sense of light is very different. You go from, as you say, that kind of cave, and you transit up through the spiral staircase, and then you're in somewhere where it's bright and feels very engaged with nature in a different way.
Yeah. Well, you actually reach the house through the only open room. It's the most enclosed room of all courtyard, but it's the one that's open to the sky. And we thought there were these important elements we wanted to frame, which are the sky and, of course, the landscape around it.
And also, to that end, you keep the interior quite minimal, with that idea of the living wall where things are sort of hidden, and there's not that sense, nothing's cluttered with furniture. So again, is that about the serenity of the experience of being there?
Yes, I think, well, we in general, even the way we live as permanent houses, we try to not have a lot of clutter around. We have lots of closet space. But we think that, especially for this temporary residence, it's the experience that matters, not the things you have around you. So people, if they make it that far, they will go with few things. So furniture is just enough to do the basics. The rest is this constant interaction with the context you're in,
Well,
with the light context, with the views, with the temperature.
Yes, with breezes, with the change, and you can move through the space depending what time of day it is and where you want to be, and so it's kind of, I guess, delivers all these very flexible options depending on mood. So you don't need things to entertain you. It's about the ultimate experience.
The house is changing constantly. Because of its surroundings. It's almost a fishbowl that
Yes.
allows for everything around it to activate it differently. So it's not only the circulations that are forcing the user to move differently every time. You can have more perimeter. Oh, sorry, my phone.
It's okay.
No, the circulations force you to move in different ways. So you either cross through the center room around the pool, or you move around the perimeter. But it's always activating in different ways the user and its relation to the surroundings, to the sky, to the clouds. The pool is reflecting all of this as well, so it becomes also another element that enhances the perception of what is surrounding.
And have you stayed there overnight? Have you experienced what it's like to be there at all times of day and night?
Yes, we actually inaugurated the house with Christian, and it was wonderful. We inaugurated the pool as well. We jumped into it. It was quite cold, I must say, and it was wonderful. And I think one can anticipate. That's what architecture does. You can anticipate a lot of things, but luckily reality is a lot more complex than whatever we can anticipate.
But that's the beauty of it, isn't it? That's
exactly, exactly. So I think when we thought about this house, we knew it could activate all these situations that were unforeseeable. And just by spending there a short time, we already experienced many of those. For example, the pavilion, the glass rooms are very narrow and quite tall, so they're almost square in proportion. So when you're lying in bed, the relation to the sky and to the outside is very overwhelming. So there was a beautiful clear sky with many, many stars, and it almost felt like the roof was gone.
Yes, almost like you're camping, or yes.
So it was beautiful. It was really well, and like this, there were many other moments of discovering things that we had maybe thought of very, very lightly, and then realized they were much more powerful than we had anticipated.
And in terms of the actual execution and getting local craftspeople and so forth, was that difficult to do when you were so far away?
Yes, it's always hard to build away from cities, and it's hard to build away from. None of us were living there, and also this is the first of the solo houses, so it was a first in every single sense. It took a while to get the right people to work there. At the beginning, there were some problems, but then what we did is we sent an architect who worked with us here for a couple of years, a Portuguese wonderful architect named Diego Porto, and Diego stayed. I think he was more than a year living in the area in a small town, and daily supervising what was being done there, and daily reporting back to us. And I think that was fundamental to guarantee that everything was done, because we also designed everything from the window frames to the faucets, and you need someone there to go and talk to every single artisan in the area and see who can do the different things we were asking for.
But then when it has all come together and it's got this really integrated feeling of inside, it feels such a holistic approach, because sometimes you see wonderful architecture, but there's a disconnect with the interior. And what I love about this place is it's all one. The thinking is one. Is that approach very much central to how you work, that you like to control the whole process?
We have always said that our favorite client has always been ourselves, because the two of us have done a couple of projects that we control everything, and we've done the furniture, that of course the architecture, everything, and of course now we add to our list Christian, because he also allowed us to do exactly that, to think about the furniture, to think where it should be placed, to think about even the cloth of the curtains, and of course there's very little furniture, but I think because there's so little, it's inevitably very important.
Yes, it's very actually. It again contributes to the ambience you want to create of quiet and experience. I read that quote in the piece in 2G, an Argentinian poet saying, in order to do art, one has to always do the same thing, but never in the same way. Do you think that applies to, it seems to me to apply to your practice. Do you think that's true for you?
Yes, I think it's absolutely true, and we've used this phrase quite a lot. We really think that there's no need to try to invent everything at once, and also that I think ideas are quite scarce, and interests in general are quite scarce, authentic interests. So ours, we know what ours are, and we've been defining them over time. I think we've not more than defining them, it's understanding them and trying to go as deep as possible into those interests. And it's not that we set out to do it that way, but I think over time and over watching our work add up, we realize that more and more visible there, that we're all somehow going back to the same things, dealing with them differently, because every case, architecture is about cases in the end. You have to solve a particular situation at a particular time, and that would inevitably shift the outcome, even if you start with exactly the same decisions or way of approaching to it. So we think there's infinite richness in that, and there's no need to try to push it any further.
I heard that that the rumor was that a rock star had bought the house, or some people were very excited, and that you were going to encourage that rumor to keep it, because somebody moved in. It sold quite quickly, didn't it, the house? And
yes.
It's occupied now.
Yes, there is a client who bought it, and I know is enjoying it very much. Yes, the rumor was that it was, I don't know if it was Madonna or some other rock star, and we thought it added flavor to the whole thing, which was fun. The locals I think were quite shocked at first to see this bit in their context, although it's out of sight and out of any route. But I think that now it's growing into them, and they're quite proud of having this piece in their neighborhood.
And then there will be more. We saw Christian when he was in Australia, and he was saying, the next project is very well underway, and so actually it's a phenomenal series of things that he's doing that won't be done really anywhere in the world, and so to be the first one of that series, I think, is quite wonderful.
It's wonderful because it worked out really well. We could have ruined the whole thing as well. It was
That's true.
It was a huge responsibility, and we're very happy. I think and we're very much looking forward to the rest of the family of houses. I think it's a stimulating project as a whole, and very positive. I think we are more and more in a society that won't take risks with architecture. So I'm very happy that we were part of it.
Absolutely, and the first, so, and we'll always be part of it. Thank you so much. That was a lovely interview. Direct answers are really good, really good.
I hope you can take some material out of it.
Oh, we will definitely.